Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. So I decided that I'm going to start a new segment on this channel, and it's going to be dedicated to gear and equipment news that I find interesting and helpful. Maybe we'll call it G&N, like gear news for nerds or something like that. I don't know. Let's kick it off. Today's top headline is for all you lucky Nikon Z8 owners out there. Yesterday, Nikon released a long-awaited major firmware update for last year's Nikon Z8. The update brings the camera from version 1.01 to version 2.0, and it comes with some features that we've seen on other cameras like the Z9 and the ZF, as well as a few new features that are currently exclusive to the Z8. Let's dive in and take a look at the features, starting with one called Pixel Shift. Now, Pixel Shift is a relatively new feature to the Nikon lineup of cameras, and it debuted with the Nikon ZF. The camera will take a series of raw photos by changing the position of the actual image sensor. Then, by using Nikon's NX Studio software, the photos can be stitched together into a high megapixel image. This is a great feature for landscape photographers, and with the Z8, it's going to produce an insanely large 180 megapixel file. The second feature I wanted to touch on was the new bird autofocus subject detection mode. This mode was released last year for the Nikon Z9, and I've been testing it on that camera for quite some time. Bird subject detection is distinct from animal subject detection in that it's hyper specialized for birds. Nikon clearly did a lot of work to train their models for this mode on a wide variety of birds in differing conditions, and my firsthand experience is that it results in a significant improvement in autofocus capability, even for small birds jumping all around in thick foliage. The best review that I could find of this feature was actually by Steve Perry, and he released it when this feature came out for the Nikon Z9. I have found that I agree with everything that he said, so I'm just going to link to his video above because he says it all very well. I'm also working on my own review for this feature after I tested a little bit more during the spring migration. Okay, so on to feature number 3. Borrowing another update from the Nikon Z9, this firmware update brings auto capture to the Nikon Z8. I did a whole video on auto capture that I'll link to above, but the short summary of this feature is that it allows you to set your camera with trigger parameters like motion, distance away from the camera, and subject side, and you just leave it waiting. When those parameters are met, the camera will automatically start taking stills or video for as long as you have set it to take them. I actually tested this feature pretty extensively recently with some of my backyard birds, and I was able to capture all kinds of great images and footage, some of which I'll share with you right now, and I'm really looking forward this year to also trying to use this to maybe capture some more elusive and skittish wildlife. I'm really glad to see that this feature has finally made it to the Z8 as well. Okay, so moving on. Another interesting addition in this update is the re-addition of an exposure delay mode to Nikon cameras. This is a handy feature that will delay your shot for a specified amount of time to help, reduce camera shake, for example. Ricci, who's a well-known Nikon ambassador, actually also did a video on this firmware update that's really worth watching, so I'll link to it above, and he revealed that he was one of the ones advocating for this change as he thought it was a better alternative to using timers. I tend to agree, and I welcome this feature to the Nikon Z mirrorless lineup, and I hope that it starts to, appear on other cameras as well. Okay, so I'm not going to read through the whole entire list of all of the changes because I would literally bore you to sleep, but I'm going to list off a few here, and then I'll link to the full changelog, in the description below. So here we go. So first, the Nikon ZF was released with a really nice picture control called Rich Tone Portrait. It has a really lovely saturated look for portraits, and that was added to the Z8. You can also now zoom in on your images even further when you're previewing them up to 400%. They've added slow motion video recording and even new camera electronic shutter sounds to choose from. They made improvements to 3D tracking, and they also added the ability to iterate through selectable focus modes with a single press of a button. So as you press that button, it will just toggle through a list of your autofocus modes. And I think this is one of the best sleeper new features that I hope that they bring to the Z9. And of course, there are a bunch of other tweaks and bug fixes as well, but I hope this well summarizes it. And again, check out the full changelog in the description below. Now, if you'd like to upgrade your camera, head over to the Nikon Firmware Download Center and download the firmware file to a memory card. Once downloaded, put the card into slot 1 on your camera, access the setup menu, and choose firmware version. The The camera's going to prompt you to update, and just make sure that while you're updating that you don't cut off the camera, or you're going to risk turning your camera into a very expensive doorstop. And alright, that was a quick one today, but that is it for this edition of Gear News for Nerds, GNN. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you out there in the field. Take care.